When I was a wee lad, Rex was one of my favorite toys, but my Rex was way smaller and hung out with a very different crew. Instead of Jesse and Bullseye, he rolled around with Anime Ninja Turtle Raphael and Lightning Strike Batman. The Potato Heads are madly in love, but my son Goku and Bill Goldberg were bitter rivals. I did have a loyal dog, but it wasn't Slinky, it was this pink dog. And instead of Buzz and Woody, my two best buds were the White Ranger and the Green Ranger. Sometimes it's fun to reminisce, and that's what we'll be doing now as we look back at PIXAR classics with PIXAR, the official cookbook. PIXAR, the official cookbook by Tarathea Harris and Esti Bende, chronicles the culinary side of the many iconic and imaginative worlds that PIXAR has brought to the silver screen throughout its rich cinematic history. This cookbook kind of reads like a history book recounting PIXAR Animation Studios' many films and shorts in chronological order, but of course focusing on the influences of food within those stories. The recipes are categorized into chapters that highlight the different eras of PIXAR, starting with the 1984 short film The Adventures of Andre and Wally B, all the way up to the 2023 film Elemental. Of course, you can find recipes inspired by the big hits like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, but there are also recipes that are dedicated to the lesser-known short films like Knick Knack and Lava, and I really like the wide variety of projects that this book covers. But of course, the tentpole films are the ones with the most recipes. Each recipe is accompanied with a blurb that talks about the recipe's inspiration, but some of the movies even have their own movie spotlight pages that further provide context of the food influences in those stories. And judging from reading the recipes and from my personal experience, a lot of the recipes are very simple and easy to follow, but also having a heavy emphasis on the looks and plating, which I think makes it very appropriate for kids and families. A lot of the recipes look very fun and visually creative. There are a lot of recreations of the food found in the stories, but there are also some recipes that try to visually emulate iconic imagery of some of the movies. The table dressing in the photos also add another degree of immersion by including props that reference characters and locales from the movies. There are some recipes that don't have photos, unfortunately, but the vast majority of them do. There's also some helpful pages at the end of the cookbook, such as a conversion chart, dietary considerations, suggested menu pairings, and there's even a page that organizes the recipes by type in case you're not feeling the chronological approach of the main table of contents. Now let's go to infinity and beyond my kitchen and then the dining table. I'm gonna make 3 recipes from the PIXAR cookbook to see what it's all about. For our first dish, we're heading to Monstropolis' most famous restaurant, Harryhausen Sushi, to get some much-needed sushi training. And what better way to do that than to make this cookbook spooky recipe of Harryhausen Sushi. First things first, we start with the rice by rinsing 2 cups of sushi rice several times until the water comes out clear. Then transfer the rice to a large pot along with 3 cups of water and heat this up over medium-high heat and bring to a boil. Once boiling, drop the heat to low, cover, and cook for 20 minutes until the water is absorbed. Once cooked, remove from the heat and set aside to cool until it's cold enough to handle. While you're waiting for the rice, in a medium skillet, heat up a tablespoon of salted butter over medium heat and add in 1 skinless fillet of salmon, season with some salt and pepper and cook for 4 minutes, then flip the salmon and cook for another 3 minutes. Once the salmon is firm to the touch, break it apart into small flakes and add in a tablespoon of soy sauce. Once the soy sauce is well incorporated, remove from the heat. Once everything is cool enough to handle, mix half of the salmon with the rice and a half teaspoon of sesame oil. The cookbook says to just use half of the salmon, but my fillet was already pretty small, so I just ended up using the whole thing. Then wet your hands and ball up the rice and salmon mixture into kind of the size of an eyeball, making sure to wet your hands between each ball so the rice doesn't stick to your fingers. Lastly, we're gonna take some sliced black olives and place them on top of each ball to kind of act like the iris of the sushi eye. Serve with some soy sauce and maybe some wasabi and serve your Harryhausen Sushi eyeballs to the fanciest clientele. Now when you think of PIXAR and food, you have to think about the 2007 classic Rat-atouille. So let's shift gears from monster Japanese cuisine to classic French and take some pointers from Remy the Rat as we tackle this iconic titular dish of Rat-atouille. First, we have to make the piperade, I think that's how you pronounce it. In a large pan, heat up a tablespoon of olive oil over medium-high heat and saute 1 diced yellow onion, a diced red pepper, a diced yellow pepper, and 10 cloves of minced garlic. Cook these up for 5 minutes, and when the onions and peppers get soft, add in a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, a teaspoon of dried basil, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, a teaspoon of dried oregano, a quarter teaspoon of red pepper flakes, a quarter teaspoon of kosher salt, and a quarter teaspoon of ground black pepper. Let this all simmer for 3 to 5 minutes to reduce. Remove from the heat, and now we're going to puree it with either an immersion blender or a standard blender, which is what I'm using here. Puree it all until smooth and set aside a quarter cup of it while spreading the rest on the bottom of a casserole or baking sheet. Now for the vegetables, you're supposed to slice some zucchini, eggplant, yellow squash, and tomatoes thinly using a mandolin, but I just used the slicer attachment of my food processor except for the tomatoes. Then once you've sliced them all up, stack the vegetables and fan them around the dish while alternating. I'm kind of annoyed that my vegetables are not consistent in diameter, but hey, life ain't perfect. Now in a small bowl, mix together a tablespoon of olive oil, a half teaspoon of garlic powder, a quarter teaspoon of thyme, and some salt and pepper. Now this sauce mixture is going to go all over the vegetables. Place parchment paper on the veggies so they don't burn and bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. After that, remove the paper and bake for another 30 minutes. But make sure you put your timer on, unlike dum-dum me who forgot to set it and left the veggies too long in the oven. I mean, they're not burnt or anything, but definitely wilty and not as colorful as I'd like. But we're not letting this go to waste, so place some of the veggies on a plate and then mix the quarter cup of the saved piperade with a tablespoon of oil and a teaspoon of white balsamic vinegar and drizzle this on the ratatouille. I also tried to fancily drizzle some on the side to copy the photo, but it definitely doesn't look as refined. Sprinkle some parsley around the plate and finish off your ratatouille with a small bit of chive on top as a garnish. Now I don't recommend that you buy a whole pack of chives just to use one tiny stalk as a garnish, but fortunately for me, I didn't have to buy a whole pack. I actually grew this chive myself, and it's one of the many herbs that I'm growing in my Click and Grow indoor garden. Living in a condo with limited space and no outdoor area, I never thought about growing my own herbs until I discovered Click and Grow's sleek and easy to use indoor gardens. I've been using Click and Grow's Smart Garden 27 for like over a year now, and it fits perfectly in my space. I used to avoid buying fresh herbs because I'd only use a small amount, leaving the rest to spoil in the fridge, but now I have fresh herbs like dill, chives, mint, and basil whenever I want. Click and Grow system isn't your typical hydroponic garden. It's super easy to use and much lower maintenance. There's no need to worry about water quality or fertilizers or pH levels, no messy roots or noisy pumps. Using it is super easy. Just pop in pre-seeded pods with smart soil technology, add water to the tank, switch on the light, and watch it grow. All of my pods sprouted except for one piri-piri pod, but no worries. Click and Grow offers a sprouting guarantee and will replace pods if they don't grow. This has been a total game changer for me. There's a Black Friday sale now until December 2nd where you can get 20% off all products from Click and Grow, and the discount will increase based on the cart total for up to 35% off. If you love fresh herbs or if you just want a low-hassle project to connect with plants and nature, I highly recommend checking this out. Now for dessert, I had to do something from Toy Story since those movies are some of my favorites of all time. This sweet recipe is from Toy Story 3. We're toying around with jelly bean burgers. Now don't worry, these aren't actual burgers. These are actually cupcakes that look like burgers. So to make the cupcakes, mix together 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour with 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder and half teaspoon of kosher salt. Combine these all in a medium bowl and set aside these dry ingredients. Now in a stand mixer, beat together a 3/4 cup of room temperature unsalted butter with 1.5 cups of sugar. Mix for about 2 minutes until light and fluffy, then add in 3 room temperature eggs, 1 egg at a time. After that, add in a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, and then add in half of the dry ingredients into the butter and mix. Once that is well incorporated, mix in a 5/8 cup of whole milk, then the rest of the flour mixture, then another 5/8 cup of whole milk. When everything is fully mixed, pour half of the batter into some cupcake pans. The cookbook calls for 2 cupcake pans for a total of 24 cavities, but I'm just making do with the ones I already have, so I'll probably just bake them in batches. Make sure to fill the cavities just 2/3 full and not all the way. For the other half of the batter, add in 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder and mix until thoroughly combined, and fill the remaining cupcake slots with the chocolate batter. Pop these in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 25 minutes. Do the toothpick test and make sure it comes out clean to know when it's done, and let the cupcakes cool for 5 minutes before transferring to a rack to cool completely. While we wait on that to cool, let's make the buttercream frosting. In a bowl of a stand mixer, place in 2 sticks of unsalted butter and mix on medium-high until smooth. Then carefully add in 2 cups of powdered sugar until fully mixed. Finally, add in 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract and a 1/8 teaspoon of kosher salt and mix until you have a nice whipped frosting texture. Now split the frosting into 3 separate bowls. On one of them add in some yellow gel food coloring until it kind of looks like mustard, red gel coloring to another one until that kind of looks like ketchup, and keep one white. That's going to be our mayo. Now for the lettuce, stir together a cup of shredded coconut with green food coloring. Had to use quite a bit of coloring on this one just to get it to look like a lettucey state. Now we have everything we need to assemble our burgers, starting with cutting your white and chocolate cupcakes into thirds. You'll need 2 slices of the white cupcakes as the buns and 1 slice of the chocolate as the meat patty. Spread some of the white mayo frosting on a white bun, the chocolate patty on top of that, some ketchup and yellow frosting using piping bags or Ziplocs with the tips cut off. Try to draw that saucy drippy look kind of falling off the sides. Then some of the coconut lettuce, and then top with some jelly beans, and then the top bun. Brush the tops on the bun with some water and sprinkle some sesame seeds on top, and that right there is a super cute, super sweet take on these jelly bean burgers. Cannot wait to pick on these, so let's sample Harryhausen Sushi. Okay, it's kind of mushy. Perhaps I added too much water, but I have a feeling it's because I rolled it up into a ball and pressed it together too hard with my big oaf hands. No wonder some sushi chefs spend years mastering the art of sushi. I guess they know the perfect amount of pressure to apply without destroying the structural integrity of the rice. But you know what? This actually tasted a lot better during the week when I ate it as leftovers. The rice firmed up in the fridge overnight and it had a much better mouthfeel the next couple of days. Kind of feels like eating small bite-sized onigiri with seasoned tuna. The olives don't really add anything aside from the looks, but all in all, super easy to make, pretty cool looking, and it's not very complex, but surprisingly tasty. I'm kind of dreading this ratatouille. I lost all of my excitement when I burnt the veggies, but let's see how this is like. You know what? It's not a disaster. The veggies don't taste burnt, but they are pretty mushy, and if I took them out on time, I'm sure they would have retained a bit of that crisp. The good news is that the piparade is delicious. Nice and tart and peppery. Overall, not too filling of a dish, which is great if you want a light meal. Herby and savory, and I'm sure I would have a deeper appreciation if I made it correctly, but I wouldn't be serving my failed attempt to any restaurant critic anytime soon. But maybe these jelly bean burgers will redeem me. I cannot get over how cute these look. I don't have much high hopes for taste, but it actually ended up tasting much better than I expected. I thought the pairing of cupcakes and jelly beans were kind of gimmicky and forced just to match the aesthetics of the movie, but they actually worked together quite well. It kind of has a similar sensation of a burger where you get the sensation of a soft bun mixed with a bouncy meat patty, but in this case it's a soft cake mixed with the bouncy chew of the jelly beans. But what I love most are the coconut flakes that gives it another layer of flavor and crispy texture. This is a super fun looking dessert that surprisingly delivers in taste. So is the PIXAR Cookbook any good? Yeah, I'd say so. I really love the kind of historical approach of the cookbook, and a lot of the recipes look super fun and whimsical without having them too complex and unapproachable. PIXAR fans would definitely adore this book and the food in it. Good stuff.